Hey everyone, welcome to Composable, a podcast that takes you deep into Web3 tech. I'm Alicia and this is Ellie. And in
Hi.
today's and in today's episode, we're just going to talk about Web3 hype versus reality. The build something real narrative has been circulating the Twitter space right now. And I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. It sometimes annoys me, but I do understand why we are trying to just repeat it. So let us dive into some of the tweets that we've seen so far.
All right. So we have a lot of tweets about let's build something real and how nothing is real anymore. And has kind of, I think that this is something that people have felt for a long time, but it's particularly been coming up lately because of all of the different meme coins that have very questionable value and things like that. So yeah, in this episode, we're going to kind of discuss those. And we're going to discuss what does it actually mean to build something real and what is like let's list some of those real things that people can build.
Yeah, 100%.
So to start off with, I want to take a hot take and jump straight into meme coins. So Alicia, how do you feel about meme coins?
Okay, so I think I always was a bit like, okay, fundamentals, like this doesn't make sense. What is this project trying to do? Then why should you participate by purchasing? That used to be me and still is me for a long time. But eventually I started realizing that, well, the blockchain is open, anyone can build on it, which is part of the premise of blockchain technology and what makes it so amazing. And if this is what people are seeing as the thing that they want to do on chain, then that says something like that is how people are choosing to use your product. So I think we released the product and this is how consumers are using it. I think, of course, when people are doing bad things with any product, that is frowned upon, and it's very easy to do bad things with meme coins or just in general like digital finance in the way that we've have it in the blockchain space. So I do understand the negative rhetoric, but I personally don't really buy meme coins. I think I bought Dogecoin like maybe in 2020, just like a little bit, but that's as far as my meme coinage.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't participate, but I do appreciate and I do think it onboards normies, even if they may have a bad experience because they could get robbed. At least they're on chain. I don't know.
Mhm.
What about you?
Yeah, I feel pretty similarly. So I don't really buy a lot of meme coins. Sometimes I have gotten some on Farcaster before, and sometimes I will buy like meme coins on Farcaster. I think the difference is that there's meme coins like degen, for example, which I would still consider it a meme coin, and it kind of started out as like a joke, but I would say it actually does have a use case. It's kind of similar to Doge, where it's like for tipping people for when they do something cool. And so in that case, it has a good use case, and so I think it's one of the good meme coins actually. But yeah, then you have obviously just a lot of the total trash meme coins that are 100% made to just make someone very wealthy by taking away money from a lot of other people. And I don't think this should be a controversial opinion, but in my opinion, those kind of meme coins, like they do not have a use case. Sometimes I see on X people talk about how meme coins do have a use case and like this this is value. And if all the meme coin is doing is just like being created and then going up in value and like rugging users, that has literally no value. And I really strongly disagree that that is at all a use case for blockchain. So, but yeah, I think it's hard to distinguish though, because it's like which meme coins have real value and end up being like degen versus, the other meme coins that are just entirely a rug.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of tricky, right? Because the idea is I can create a currency for anything and any purpose. If I want to start an Ellie and Ali club and we create a currency and that's for us to trade between each other, that's what we decide to do. And I mean,
Mhm.
in that case, like there are no other consumers of this coin. So maybe it's fine. But then when you have an entire market built around it, what the community does to that market is where things go awry. Like I can imagine a developer creating a meme coin, not planning to rug, and somebody else just apes in and now they're a majority holder and then they dump on the market and it's like the
Yeah.
developer didn't have that intention. So
Mhm.
yeah, it sounds like we're just having the same problems that traditional finance would have had in the start, where people were allowed to create and do anything they want, and then regulation comes in. Maybe it's a bit too tight, or but they try to correct some of the issues that we have. when I was at which conference was this? The one in Thailand. One guy said something that was interesting, and he said that when you want to invest in a project in the Web3 space, if it's a legitimate project, it's kind of hard to actually be an early investor.
Yeah.
Whereas with a meme coin, like you have full access to invest from day one. So it does empower the investor. And I'm like, yes, I get that. I agree. But if nothing of substance is being built, then why are you investing in it? So maybe it's not
Mhm.
investing. Maybe it's just gambling and you just accept it and call it what it is.
Yeah. So I think this brings up like an interesting point too. So I was wanting to try to find it. Jill just tweeted this. Oh, thank you, Golden. Yeah. Jill just tweeted this tweet about how um, um, Matt Levine, who does like traditional finance writing, he's really popular, has basically says that like blockchain is discovering everything that TradFi discovered 100 years ago, which is really true. And it's particularly now regulation. So like this is why, they initially regulate markets is because of these exact reasons. And but I think it's a tough choice. I'm not sure how I feel because, like, on one hand, if we're just looking at TradFi, I'm not necessarily saying crypto should be regulated, but like if we're just looking at TradFi, these regulations do protect consumers, and
Yeah.
this is good. Like they have rules where you have to give consumers like who are trading like the best price. You can't force them to execute at a worse price, and all of these things are very important for consumers. But on the other hand, I do also feel like people should have freedom to do what they want. So, for example, today, most people cannot invest directly in like private equity because it has these really big requirements. You have to be like an accredited investor, which usually means you have a lot of money or, you have some like credentials. And I understand that because a lot of private equity, similar to meme coins, is going to go nowhere and it's going to go to zero. And a lot of people really probably shouldn't invest in it. But at the same time, I like the freedom. And so I'm really not sure how I feel because I want people to have the freedom to create coins to bootstrap projects that otherwise would not get like a traditional investor. Um, and to be able to like redistribute their investment to the people who believed in them. Uh, but yeah, of course, that comes with people who are doing it in a scammy way. And to me, I guess I just don't really see. There's no way for crypto to like enforce that, and we wouldn't want the governments to enforce it either. So it's kind of one of those things like users. We just have to educate users somehow to be like, well, this is a real project, but this one isn't. But everybody claims they're a real project to build something real. Uh, but so yeah, it's tough. It's tough because like I kind of want both sides.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. And even as you were describing the fact that if you would like to invest in something like private equity, you need to be an accredited investor. And that means you have like a large portfolio, let's say of 1 million and up. So then that kind of reminds me of the narrative of like, oh, so the rich are allowed to get richer. Whereas in Web3, let's say you have a big break with some meme coin and then you become rich
Mhm.
and you didn't start off in that place at all. So it does provide, I don't even want to use the word opportunity because it is very risky, but it still is an
Mhm.
opportunity. I guess it's a risk reward system, but just
Yeah.
super heavy on the risk. And it could also
Mhm.
be super heavy on the reward as well. So I
Mhm.
think the personality types of people who ape in crypto already, they're very risk tolerant anyway. And I do think that it should be open, but I do appreciate guardrails. I'm not too sure how it will be implemented, like whether it's all the way down to the blockchain layer. But I think because of this openness and because people are using meme coins so frequently, we either have to accept that if we are building a technology that allows for the creation of digital assets, then this is a side effect of it, or we somehow force or encourage people to build something real, hence all of the tweets that we are seeing.
Mhm.
So, Ellie, what does it mean to you to build something real?
Yeah. So this is a good question. I guess short answer would be building something real is never one of those meme coins that just rugs people. Um, but I don't know. It's hard because it's tricky because a lot of the projects that are building stuff that are real and that I really believe in, they do take a long time to build. I'll give an example of Aztec, for example. I think like Aztec is super, super good. But it takes a long time to build a system like that. And so it's very difficult to for projects to convey like their vision and their value and keep people on board for such a long time while they actually produce that thing that's real. Um, so yeah, that's tricky. I'm actually not sure how I would describe building something real. I don't know. What do you think?
Okay, I think for me, I'm gonna put it into the box of digital products, like even on chain or Web3, because I could say something real is actually something physically manifested on Earth, like plant
Mhm.
crops or something. But but I think to build something real means that you're solving a problem that a lot of people experience and feel a relief based on your solution. So they're like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for creating this product. You've now made my life easier." That feels real, and also something that I guess has real users. And of course, the scale of these users and how many people use your product, it depends. Because if your mission is to solve something very niche, but it may not have a widespread use case, like I think that's fine as well, because you have solved it for like some group of people. And I think that's still worthwhile as well. But yeah, I think it's like solving a problem that people feel as though it needed to be solved and you've created a new way to do it that is a lot better. I think that's what it means to build something real. And when I think about applications that have done that for me is I would say Aave, I would say 1inch. I always talk about RP and 1inch. And
Mhm.
I think it's because like I use it and I think it's a real product that helps me. It's a very on-chain use case. Like you have to have crypto before you even use those products, to even have a need for it. But as long as you started transacting in crypto, then you're going to want to exchange your cryptocurrency and you're going to want to exchange it at the best rate. And you don't want to have to go to different exchanges. And then if you
Mhm.
have it just sitting in your wallet, you want to find a dependable way to maybe earn just like how you would put money into the bank. So that's where I wanted Aave solves that problem for me. And I think even if I weren't, like, let's say I wasn't in crypto, another thing crypto has done, like just the creation of digital assets like stable coins, it means that people can get paid anywhere, no matter where they are, once they have an internet connection and they have some sort of device that can have a wallet on it. And I think that is solving a real use case. So if you are living somewhere and you get some freelance gig and you're earning in crypto, then I think just the fact that you've had access to this currency, if it's a stable coin especially, then I think it has unlocked a use case for you because now you're able to receive funds or even just remittances, sending money from one country to another. So I think those are real use cases because it has really improved those people's experiences and my experiences as well. Um, I mean, there are products. Yeah. Sorry, you're
Oh,
going to say.
oh, I was just gonna say, no, I really like that definition because I think if you're talking you define it as, like, something that's solving a real problem, and I really like that because, a lot of meme coins cannot fall into that category, even though I mean, I'm sure they claim that they do. They're like, "Oh, I'm solving some sort of a problem." But I think that this is good because, like, that would be degen. Like, degen is a meme coin, but it actually does have a problem that it's trying to solve. So it would kind of fit into like a real project. I like that
Well,
definition
tell
a
me
lot.
more about Degen. I know of it, but I'm not familiar.
Yeah, so it's very popular on Farcaster,
Mhm.
and it's kind of a way to tip people who post good things. There's some other somewhat similar kind of coins like Moxie and things like that. But yeah, so it just started out like people tip each other for things, but now it's really grown. So they actually have their own L3 now, which is pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
And basically, if you're kind of someone who has a lot of degen, they mint new degen that you can just give out to people for free to, to like reward people. So, yeah, it's just a really cool system of rewarding people for posting cool things, useful things. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think in that case, you use Farcaster a lot. So I think for you, social media on chain is something that you would say is a real use case.
I
Or,
would. Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, I would. I think that there's a couple of things that social media on chain solves. One of my favorite things I think it solves is this decentralization of the algorithm that is being run in your feed. Now we're not quite there yet. We don't have like 100 different algorithms people can choose from, but with something like Farcaster, anybody could build their own algorithm that shows you content in a certain order. And I'm a very strong disliker of the Twitter algorithm because it really is just designed to make you like upset and put you in a negative mood. So I think that that's a use case. Is like people always talk about how social media can be very toxic and negative, which is so true. I mean, as we've all seen on Twitter.
Yeah.
But having the ability to like decentralize these things and allow anybody to make an algorithm that's better, I think actually makes social media a lot better. It makes it a lot less toxic place. Um, I also really like the idea that people own their own data. So this goes beyond just social media. But yeah, I like the idea that people own their own data. Like if I create a post on Farcaster, like that's mine, I own it. And I think this is really important. And I also think it's a really big paradigm shift. So maybe this is a good segue into our next project, which is, or sorry, our next topic, which is, like, why is it so hard to build something real? And I think one of the reasons it's very difficult is because it requires like a fundamental shift in how we think about things. I know
Mhm.
you feel this too. Like today, you never own your data. And so that you're just used to not owning your own data and you never think about it. But then comes blockchain, and you have the idea of like, oh, I can own my own data, but you don't even know how to conceptualize it because you're like, I've never actually experienced that before in my life. You don't even know that it's something you want. Um, well, anyway, back to the point. I really like the owning your own data and being able to customize your algorithms and just customize the content that you consume so it's positive for you and what you want. So, big fan of Farcaster,
Yeah.
as many people know.
I love that. I love that. I have 2 questions for you, and I hope I can remember it. So the first one is, I don't wanna put you on the spot, but do you know how one can build an algorithm on Farcaster so that you can prioritize what kind of feed you have? Let's say you prioritize only positive posts. Like, how does one go about doing that?
Yes. So I'm not sure if so they have different Farcaster clients out there, which are basically different apps you use to interact with the protocol. So like
Mhm.
there's Warpcast, there's Supercast, there's Recast, some others. Um, I'm not sure if there's any clients out there that like let you import algorithms yet. If there are, I'd really love to know. But today you would probably go about it by making your own client that
Okay.
has that certain algorithm.
Interesting. So you have to run infrastructure, create a client, and then make sure it's available so that other people can then subscribe to your client or like get posts from your client.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, so that's one developer challenge to build
Mhm.
something real. Create a client that has like a customized algorithm. Let's say you're
Mhm.
prioritizing positive posts, because I definitely and I can agree with that. I have burnt out from social media so many times, and I think it's because you go on there and it just drains you because you see negative
Mhm.
things, you see positive things as well, but it's just a lot to deal with. I would love
Mhm.
if my timeline just shows me 5 things a day.
Yeah.
And I just like zero in on those 5 things, and I
Mhm.
would I would use social media every day in that case.
Mhm.
So that's an example of something that someone can build. I really like that as well. And on the topic of changing your mindset and appreciating that in Web3, you have this concept of ownership, right? You can own the things that you create in Web3, whether it's a social media post, whether you buy an NFT, whether you're playing a game, you can own the assets. And I think the interesting thing about this paradigm shift is that we actually see the opposite thing in Web 2. Right now, everything
Yeah.
is about subscriptions. You don't own the
Yeah.
music, you don't own the
Mhm.
movies. Like there was a podcast with the guy who created Netflix, and he mentioned that, yeah, they had this model where they used to have DVDs in a warehouse, and they were trying to figure out, like, how can they deal with this? Like, how can they deal with people returning their DVDs? And in
Mhm.
the end, they were like, yeah, just keep it. Just keep the DVD because we know like you don't really care to retain it. And then finally, now they're at this point where it's a complete subscription. You don't own it, but you have
Mhm.
access if you pay monthly. So I don't know if everyone can really subscribe to that paradigm shift because
Yeah.
why?
No, yeah, I completely agree, where, like, there's so few things. I have examples of things that um like, even things that you do buy digitally, sometimes you don't actually own. I've had examples of, like, "Oh, I've bought a movie digitally," but then it turns out it can't, like, they won't let me play it on my Mac, for example, because I bought it from Microsoft, and yeah, I think it's, like, a really different concept, but I mean, I feel like in Web 2, I wish you could have more ownership, and I wish that that
Mhm.
was the norm, um, because, yeah, I mean, it's giving power to, like, the people that are actually using things, which I think is important. I don't know, like, do you have any other use cases about data ownership that you feel strongly about?
Yeah, well, I mean, one use case that comes to mind because we were talking about social media is that you can post your content and then you own it. So let's say you had a tweet that went crazy. You just announced the drop of something, and people are like, they really like this tweet and someone wants to own it because maybe in the future they think the company that you just mentioned you're going to launch is going to be worth so much money and they want to own the
Mhm,
first tweet where you mentioned, oh yeah, I'm going to do this company. Then you
mhm,
can sell that post. I mean, not everything you tweet or you post on Podcaster may be something people want to buy, but you can. And I have done this on Lens. Like on Lens Protocol is similar to Podcaster, I think, it's social media on
mhm,
chain. And like I've posted like some of my videos talking about something and it's me and one other person. So like let's say I'm doing a podcast with someone and I say, okay, this is an NFT. Like as you post as an NFT, and then
mhm,
you can say, if you would like to collect this NFT, you pay this much Matic, because at that time I was on Polygon. And I can also split the earnings with the other person who was on the podcast with me. So it just made
mhm,
it so easy for me to have an experience where, okay, I have no one paying me to create this podcast. However, the viewers who are really interested are supporting by purchasing NFT, kind of like hitting subscribe, but except you're putting a little bit
mhm,
more skin in the game. And like if someone was a full time content creator, I can see them like really maximizing on this and rewarding people who are, supporting their career as well. So I think when you care about ownership, in my opinion, is when you care about the financial aspects of ownership. You care
mhm,
about having the ability in the future to maybe sell it. There may be some other reasons why you care as well. Like you want to always have access to your stuff, which is what you mentioned. You bought a movie and it's on another platform. And even though it's completely yours, they don't allow you to use it on an alternative platform for their
yeah,
own reasons. Maybe because it's competition. Like, bro, like that has nothing to do with
literally, yeah,
me.
no, it literally is just competition.
Yeah. So like there definitely are other reasons. And when we first went from owning even software like Microsoft Word to having to pay a subscription, I remember being so annoyed. I'm like, I can't believe you're
Mhm,
forcing me to pay this monthly. But now I'm there, I'm paying the monthly fee. So it's
mhm,
almost like relearning what it feels to be an owner. I think we've kind of
yeah,
forgotten.
mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. We've totally forgotten. I think so, and this is something people talk about as another big benefit of Web3, is that you also have decentralization and censorship resistance. And I think this is another one of the very big paradigm shifts, especially for a lot of people who, like me, live in the US, because you think, like, why do I actually need censorship resistance? Um, and so it's like, why do I need privacy? Why do I need censorship resistance? Why do I want decentralization? And it's a paradigm shift because, yeah, like a lot of times I'm not really censored from doing financial activities in the US. But then you think about it, and actually I am. Like I can't receive airdrops, for example,
Mm,
which, under airdrops can be questionable sometimes, but a lot of times they give airdrops to people who like contributed on GitHub, like I who have done something to help the protocol. And I'm not allowed to do that. Technically, I am not allowed to use Polymarket as a US person. And so I mean, I think that these are actual real examples of censorship. They might not be, times when, oh, I'm getting censored because of a human rights violation that we think of.
right.
But, like people in the US do get censored from doing things 100%. And but you have to just, it's such a mind shift to be like, oh, actually, that's censorship and not just normal everyday behavior.
Yeah. That makes so much sense as well. Like, how dare you deny me the ability to accept this internet money? I want that
Mhm.
internet money.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what you think about it. But then I
Yeah.
would say that's a very Web3 problem. Like the
Mhm.
entire continent, yeah, the entire US is a continent, right? Yeah. All of the United States, like they don't have that problem. But I do agree,
Mhm.
like once you have the problem of lack of access, and like, if you don't feel like you have freedom, I do think Web3 solve a lot of those problems. And I say a lot, I mean more in the financial space, like, just
Mhm.
the ability to having something that has value. Because I posted a tweet this week or last week asking people, like, what do you think is a valuable thing we do in Web3? And most people said freedom.
Mhm.
So, but that's a mindset. I do think freedom is a mindset as well.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I think if I would go talk to a lot of people I know who aren't in crypto, they would absolutely be like, "Who cares that you can't claim some stupid airdrop?" You know? Like, they wouldn't get it. Yeah.
Absolutely not. And okay, so one thing I want to think about when it comes to value in Web3. So we've clearly identified that it is valuable to own the things that you have. It's valuable to have access. It's valuable to even have the ability to financialize the things that you create online, because it's very straightforward. If you have a physical asset and I say, hey, I trade this with you online, it's not so straightforward. And Web3 does help unlock that. And one question I want to know, or one question I have is like, what do you think about the way value is measured on chain? Like, do you feel like we
Mhm.
have the best metrics to measure value? For example, active wallets. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, this is really tough because I think the metrics are good and they make sense, but they do have so many drawbacks.
Mm,
It's like each metric you really have to take into context of things because they can be so easily gamed. Like
mm,
the number of active addresses. Well, that's a good metric, but it also can be gamed. The how many users like you get for something, well, that can also be gamed, just people trying to vie for an airdrop. So yeah, it's really tricky. And then but then you could also do like, oh, TVL, that's a good metric. Well, sometimes it's a good metric, but other times it's really not indicative of like the protocol doing anything useful.
yeah.
um it just might be hype. People are putting a bunch of money into this thing because it's promising like 50% returns. So, yes, I think that this is really difficult. I think it probably matters on which type of application it is. So I'd say
Mm,
on something like Farcaster, I could see active addresses being more important there. And you'd have to do some filtering to see like who's actually active versus most likely a bot. I think that like useful there. Whereas, yeah, in something like Uniswap and like TVL is more useful, but none of them really capture it entirely. I don't know. What do you think?
yeah, I think that I can see both in Web 2 and Web 3 it being gamed. So, for example, I can sign up with a website and use multiple email addresses because I'm trying to get over the free trial. Like, you can do things like that. Or maybe when
Mhm.
you try to sign into a website and you use the wrong email, they still create an account for you by default. If you know how that irks me, anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but like in Web3, people can do the same, right? They can create multiple wallets and connect to a website. So if like a particular app is saying, like, look, we have this many wallets using our particular platform, then we don't know how many of those wallets are real users and genuine users and people who aren't just trying to farm airdrops as well. So I do think we have a good foundation. Like the good thing about blockchain data is public, so we can actually have a lot of visibility. But maybe we need some more, like some stats that are a little bit smarter. For example, how many
Mhm.
times has this user interacted with the app this month? Were they interacting with the app, in a way that seemed human-like, or is it that they were coming
Mhm.
every day at 10 p.m.? Like that might be kind
Mhm.
of strange. You might think like maybe that's a bot. Like if we can just get some deep analytics, I think that would help reflect the activity better. And I do think what you said is right, where people may look at things like market cap and TVL to try to ascertain value. But that is definitely not a good way to check value in Web3 because a
Mhm.
project can be in the top 100 and be a meme coin. It can be in the top 10 and be a
Mhm.
meme coin, and
Mhm.
nothing is happening. So, yeah, I do think like what people are doing with the platform, why they're using the platform, understanding that data would help. But we do have a good foundation, I must admit, because the data is public.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree, and I actually had a real-time thought while you were talking, is that, you have companies like, S&P or, things that, like, evaluate traditional finance,
Yeah.
um, and it'd be kinda cool if we could have a decentralized version of that. Like, we have some algorithm, but it's confirmed on chain, so, like, it's everybody knows how it works, but it's like a smart ranking, and it takes all of these things into account for some certain app. I think that that could be really cool, and is like an actual use case for blockchain as well. Someone probably has already made this, I just don't know
Yeah.
about it.
No, no, that's great. Build something real. This is another thing you can build, like have smarter metrics because it's hard for us to advance if we don't truly understand what's happening. Like we have these
Mhm,
false indicators of how popular or how well a project is doing, and it may not be realistic. So I
mhm,
definitely agree with that. Speaking of which, I just remembered, so last week there was this call on Twitter
mm,
and it was the Ethereum devs community, and they essentially were hosting various builders in the space. And
mhm.
they hosted this one profile or one app called Bounty Caster. And
I I
yeah,
love Bounty Caster.
yeah. And I love the idea, and it's on social media. So it's on Farcaster, and it gives the ability for anyone to create a bounty for people to do anything. And of course, it's using the fact that it's easy to pay persons with crypto. And I think that's
Mhm,
an example of something that probably would be so much harder to do. Like, let's say TikTok wanted to do this. Let's say anyone can post a bounty on TikTok and be like, yo, create an ad about my product, like create an ad about
mhm,
this cup. But then you have the restrictions of like, oh, you must only be in the US and maybe
yeah,
Hawaii.
mhm,
So like you really limit exposure and the ability for others to contribute. Whereas on Farcaster, if you do the same thing with Bounty Caster, then now anyone has access. And that's the freedom. And that is
Mhm,
freedom that is enabled by the currencies as well. So I did think that was a really good example of someone building something real and using blockchain to solve a problem in a way that improves the user experience more than if it
mhm.
were a Web2 app.
Yeah. I think this actually reminds me of another really good thing I think that blockchain can be good for is like global coordination. So this is something
Mm,
I like about bounty casters. You can post a bounty and then, people from all over the world can like find it and you can find, the best solution to your problem instead of I mean, you could kind of do this on Twitter. Actually, so Bounty Caster is on Twitter as well, so it kind of still
okay.
solves this problem. Um, but yeah, usually you don't have access to that. Like, you don't have access to say, find me, the best painter in the entire world, so I can commission some art from them. And so I think this kind of global coordination is another like important use case.
Yeah. Love
Mhm.
that. Do you think there is some metric in Web3 that cannot be gamed? Like something that
Mm.
yeah, you can't manipulate?
I want to say no. I want to say that like we could provably write some theorem maybe that says that this is impossible because blockchain is open and anybody can do it. It feels like you can't prevent bad actors. So
Mm,
I'm not sure. I think the only thing would be like a smart metric that uses filters to filter out based on behavior. Um, yeah, I don't think there's a metric that can't be gamed in crypto, to be honest. What about
yeah.
you?
I mean, yeah, even the example you gave, and that's assuming that the bad actor doesn't learn what you're using to filter and then changes its
Mhm,
behavior.
mhm. No, yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say that's a really good point. Is that for example, people have like they'll have bots or something do stuff, and then people recognize it, so then the bots get smarter, and then the algorithm needs to get smarter, and it's just this like constant race of can we outsmart the algorithm? And that's not. I mean, it's not a good situation.
Yeah.
It's
Sounds
just
like
kind of
a
cool.
race for AI agents. Like, leave the
Yeah,
humans out of it.
basically.
Okay, we are done. We give up.
Mhm,
I think, I mean, I don't know if this is accurate, but I would say maybe blockchain timestamps. Like, if the thing happened at that time, it happened at that time. Like, yes, maybe the person running the node can do something to game it a tiny bit, but they have little incentive to do so. But I can't think of what you would use blockchain timestamps for, except for trying to determine some feature metric or some other metric, such as like,
mhm,
oh, like is this person doing this thing at the same time every time? Then that's kind of weird.
mhm,
You're probably not real.
mhm.
Um, so that's the only thing. So you'd have to use that in your metric calculation. So for those of you who are still thinking about building the product that Ellie mentioned, that's the tip.
Yeah, I really like that. Actually, I didn't think of timestamps. I was thinking, yeah, differently, but that's a good one.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Um, let's see. And I think the other thing that makes it kind of difficult for real activity on chain is the fact that we are financializing everything. So people use it because they think they're going to get something out of it and not because they need it. And I think that
mhm,
also makes it a bit hard to judge how well you are doing. I think maybe post airdrop, give or take 1 year. And if you're still around and people are still using your platform and you're even increasing the number of users that you have, assuming we're not in a bear market, I think that's a really good sign of
mhm,
you solving a problem that people actually care to use. So maybe we need to have, like, like in traditional stocks, there is the idea of aristocrats, like dividend payers who paid dividends, and they have like these categories. If
mhm,
you've paid dividends like for the
mhm.
past 25 years, we kind of need this in Web3 where we have these projects that through markets, we see that people are still using them and they're actually increasing users. I'd say these are products that are real and are solving a real problem.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Okay, so what can people build on chain? I think it will be worthwhile to think about the categories of what do people build on chain? Like if I were completely new to Web3, but I want to build something real because I keep seeing everyone talking about it, what do I build? Like what are the categories of things? A mobile app? Like what is it?
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. I still think that like there's a lot of categories we haven't discovered yet, just because we haven't
Mhm.
shifted our minds that way. But I think there's things like dexes or aggregators like 1inch or CowSwap or things like that. I think these things can always be improved. So I guess I would say like financial products that are related to trading.
Yeah.
And then I think the other big category is related to privacy. So there's a lot of privacy projects, which sometimes they overlap with each other. And then I think the last one is like the social aspect. So this would be like Farcaster, like you're building your own app on top of Farcaster, like Bountycaster. Those are like the very broad categories, I feel. I don't know. What do you think? Am I missing any categories?
No, I agree with your categories, but I have a question to you. Why are we using blockchain to solve problems in those spaces?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So, okay, I guess we'll take like decentralized finance. I think this is a good one because it allows, like Uniswap, it allows anybody can trade for any token they want. So it creates a very fluid and efficient experience for people to trade. Like you could, for example, I could trade between like USDC and Euro on blockchain, and that probably would be cheaper than doing it in real life and paying an exchange rate. So it's like it really lowers the barrier of entry and it reduces a lot of friction, which I think is important. Um, and then also, I think it's important, kind of what we touched on before, where it just gives average people the ability to potentially do something more useful with their money that they could not get otherwise because they're restricted through any sort of regulations or whatever. So I think it solves financial freedom, is I guess what I would say.
Yeah.
I think privacy solves a lot of privacy issues. You know, things like you don't want people using your data to create ads about you, to train AI on your personal data, things like that. So I think privacy is very important. So it's solving that problem. Although privacy doesn't have to always be on chain. Actually, that's a really good point. It doesn't have to always be on chain. And then I think the social side of it is, kind of what we touched on before.
Yeah.
You own your data, like you have this what am I thinking of? Coordination across everybody. Um, but yeah, I think it's a good point though, actually. You could technically create something where people own their own data that is not on blockchain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, like, okay, so I think for privacy on chain, I think it solves on chain privacy. I might be wrong, but like
Mm,
if you're in the real world and you are at like the grocery store, you need to prove your age to buy alcohol and you have to show them
mm,
your ID card. If you know how that annoys me so much, because I'm like, why am I giving this random person my ID with all my information? This is like
mhm,
ridiculous. Anyway,
mhm,
but you want to do that? Like, I don't know. Maybe if you had like a digital ID, yeah, so it has to be digital. Yeah, so that makes sense. If you have like a digital ID that the entire government uses and it is blockchain based, then yes, I can see how privacy would be used on chain. But it doesn't just solve problems, it requires your assets to be on chain. And maybe that's why some of the problems we're solving may feel as though like we're not actually providing the solution just yet because we don't have the foundation for it to be actually implemented in a way that makes sense. But of course, like there are communities who are completely blockchain based and your account is based on your user account. And, there's Gitcoin Passport, for example. So there definitely can be ways where it can be used on chain today, but still very much for the Web3 natives, which I think
mhm,
is fine because we are large enough, in my opinion, that we can solve problems for this particular niche.
mhm,
And maybe if you're investing in Web3 and like you're a big hedge fund, you're trying to figure out, well, how much you should invest, like how much are these people worth? And then we sell the promise of, oh, well, it's just crypto natives right now using it, but soon everyone will use it. And I think it's bridging that gap
mhm,
is maybe another part of the build something real narrative that people are trying to figure out. They're like,
yeah,
yes, we're building for each other and it works and we use it, even if the UX might not be the best. But
mhm,
how can we get other people on board? And I think we aren't as digital, we as like a universe, as a world. We
mhm,
aren't as online for blockchain to really solve the problems that well.
mhm. Yeah.
But
No, I do. I really like the point about privacy because you totally could build something that proved your age without blockchain, actually.
yeah,
And I know there's someone on Twitter who actually tweeted this exact same thing, and I really liked his tweet. Um, so this is kind of an interesting idea, specifically in the area of privacy. I think blockchain privacy can solve a lot of issues, especially when you need to like agree on something private or you want a private DEX or something.
yeah,
But I actually think one of the nice things about crypto is that it's pushing privacy forward, even
Mm.
like not even without blockchain. So there's a lot more privacy use cases coming out that don't need blockchain, and I think that it's been pushed forward because of blockchain. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's an interesting point. There are a lot of use cases that really don't need blockchain.
Yeah. I would say again for privacy, it's actually kind of bonkers that we all have our addresses okay, the addresses are public, but you can't figure out
Mhm.
who owns it. But then you bought a .eth domain or you participated in this
Mhm.
project and you did that and then you completely
Mhm.
doxed yourself on chain. And I think everyone should be screaming for privacy products on chain because like that
Yeah.
is actually wild. No, no,
Mhm.
that shouldn't be happening. So I do see the need for blockchain on chain and not blockchain on chain. That should be a thing for privacy on chain. But I do definitely see a gap between getting regular people understanding why they would need privacy on chain unless they're already on chain.
What do you think is the for all these people who are building something real, eventually they need people to use it. What do you think is the biggest barrier to getting non-crypto people like using crypto?
Damn, girl.
It's a tough one.
um, it depends on the problem they're solving because I think if the problem they were solving was a big enough problem and the crypto solution solved it well, then they would use it. So I
Mhm.
think if I were to ask someone right now who doesn't have access to a US bank account, if they can accept crypto for some particular job. Actually, I had to do that recently. Like I had to send money to Trinidad and I used crypto instead because it was just easier and
Mhm.
faster to get the job done. So I think that person definitely is using a crypto product and they're probably onboarded via an exchange. So the idea of someone using a crypto exchange, I think that is a real product. That's like a service product in the Web3 space. So I think that solves a problem. I think besides that, if you were to attract people into Web3, maybe it's a bit too many steps to go through. Like you have to create a MetaMask wallet. As soon as you create the wallet, they're telling you, oh, keep this phrase private. Keep it private
Mhm.
where?
Yeah.
Like most people just have one password for everything or they
Mhm.
write it down. It's very insecure. So I think just the steps of onboarding is very hard. So I do think the UX, like improving the UX definitely helps. So smart wallets help with that. And I have seen examples of how you can use your email address connected to actual blockchain account. So I do think that solves that. Um, so I would say those are the biggest reasons. Either the problem isn't big enough or the onboarding experience is not great. And a lot of the onboarding experiences right now in Web3 requires you to have tokens to pay for something. And then now
Yeah.
having to get that is just like, where, how, why?
Mhm.
So too many steps, I think.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think particularly getting the tokens in the first place, because for a regular person, they would need to go through Coinbase or something like that. Um, I don't think this will happen anytime soon, but it would be cool if just like regular banks would offer this. So you could just say, like, oh, my regular bank that I'm using for my checking account, just convert this amount into crypto and send it to me. Cause I agree, like once you're on chain, being able to pay people is so awesome. Like I love being able to pay people on Farcaster and everybody has an address associated with their account. It's like really easy. But yeah, getting the tokens in the first place is tough.
Yeah. And I think maybe acceptance, maybe just general
Mhm.
acceptance of Web3. I think Web3 is seen as very scammy and it can be very scammy.
Yeah.
So people kind of shy away unless they have like a strong desire. And their strong desire might come in the form of, I want to make a lot of money. I see people making money with meme coins. That's a strong desire. I
Yeah.
want to get paid. That's a strong desire. Like a lot of the strong desires to use Web3 are around some kind of an ability to make money. That's why,
Yeah.
like, when I see the meme coins going off, like, I'm upset, but at the same time, like, I get it because
Yeah. Mhm.
that's what draw people. Like, when you go to like some countries that may not have the best adoption of crypto, they're not asking you how to get onboarded. They're like, how do I make money in Web3? They don't care
Mhm.
about being onboarded. They just care about their ability to make money, and that's like a
Mhm.
big sign. You're like, they just want to make money. Like everyone just wants to make
Mhm.
money. So yeah, I think those are the people who willingly go through the hoops.
Mhm.
People who want to make money or they for some reason need to accept payments. And then there are people like us who are just, developers who want to build or just crypto curious. But we definitely are a small sliver in terms of the entire slice of the population.
Yeah. I agree.
I think when I think about developers and understanding what they should build in Web3 and to build something real narratives, I don't know if I said before, but the reason why it was annoying me when I see it is because no one is telling you what you should build. And
Mhm,
when people build in Web3, people complain like, oh, that's just a clone of this product. Like you're just building
mhm,
another DeFi app. And I'm like, yeah, because I think finance is like a product market fit for blockchain technology. Or
yeah,
when you build a social app, people aren't using it. And I'm like, okay, so like, what do you want us to build? Like, what can we
mhm,
build that people use? And the categories I think of are applications. So you
mhm,
mentioned 1inch, or I mentioned 1inch, but like, you mentioned other applications like that, like Dexes, Uniswap, for example. I think one area that I have learned since joining Espresso is just the idea of like these external networks that verify something. So people are
mhm,
building these distributed and decentralized networks that are used to help prove something on chain. And I find that to be very interesting. So, like, you see these cross chain messaging platforms like
mhm,
Layer0 and Hyperlane, and then
mhm,
they've created these networks that are verifying that these messages are valid as they go in between two chains because these two chains are isolated from each other and they don't have any idea. So, if you're a developer, like, this is an example of something that you can build. Like, you can build something that's verifying on chain data.
mhm,
And if you're building these type of systems, you have to know programming languages like Rust or Go because you're building something that's more on the systems engineering side. And another thing you can build is an end user service. Coinbase, a crypto exchange, is a good example. Not an easy thing to build, but
no,
that's a good example. I think platforms that are used for, I think there was this one platform that allowed you to create like a tweet and it would post it on all the different social media platforms. That's an example of a service. Like
mhm.
I want to tweet, post a Filecaster, post a Lens. Um, what do you like? Do you think of any other categories
Um,
that people can build in?
no, yeah, I think that those are really good categories. I think that but there's definitely a lot of space for, like, all types of developers. So,
Mhm.
one thing I would say is, like, you could actually there's I still think that there's a lot of demand to build very good front ends that just
Mm,
have a good user experience, and you don't have to do anything on chain. Like, you'll have to send some transactions on chain, but you don't need to, like, code smart contracts or any of that stuff. I think that that can still be really, really valuable because the user experience is improved so much through the front end, and there's so much front end magic that we can do to just make it work for people. So I like that there's kind of all sort of different parts. You can obviously make your own smart contracts, and then you can work on system stuff. Um, so, uh, yeah, I think that there's a lot to do, and I actually don't really have a problem with people cloning apps. So, of course,
same.
some people clone apps and they use it for scammy reasons. Of course, they do. But there's a lot of really cool apps that have actually started out as clones. Like Sushi Swap started out as a clone of Uniswap, but it's kind of like made its own niche. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with like cloning some existing application because it's open source and that's why we make these things open source and then like making your tweaks on it to make it better or to make it different. I think that's actually how a lot of applications start, both
Yeah.
in Web 2 as well. You think about, oh, like Facebook and then Twitter and then Instagram, like they're all kind of similar ideas, but slightly different. So yeah, I don't think developers should be afraid of cloning apps.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Definitely.
Um, okay, let's do a final topic,
Mhm.
which is how do we think that kind of interoperability is affecting people building something real or users actually getting on chain or any of this stuff?
Jeez Louise. I think when I think about composability and build something real, you're definitely, or there's a higher chance of you solving an on-chain problem. So, for
Mhm.
example, even using a decentralized exchange is an on-chain problem you're solving. How do I trade assets? And if you have a decentralized exchange and this decentralized exchange needs to trade assets, these assets need to have liquidity. And
Yeah.
therefore you can, trade the assets on that particular chain. But if this DEX would now like, so if I have created not sushi, so I call it roti swap. So I created
Mhm.
roti swap, which is a clone of sushi swap.
Mhm.
And I would like to launch this on as many chains as possible. But then when I realize I go on another chain, there's not enough liquidity for this particular token that I'd like to trade, or no one is interested in using it. That then makes it very difficult for me to know whether or not I can deploy on another chain. So then maybe
Yeah.
I'm restricted to how many chains I want to deploy my app on. So I'm a developer. I'm happy to build. I've created a product that people want to use, But then now I have this fragmentation because the people who really like the idea of rotate swap, well, they're over
Mhm.
on base. And I
Yeah.
deployed on Solana for some reason, or I deployed
Mhm.
on Arbitrum. So I think it definitely makes it harder for developers to create the experiences that they want.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that when we talk about, like, also adoption is that, there's certain chains that are very cheap to deploy on and really cool, but they're not going to attract users. And I think if we had better interoperability to just every app can access users from all of these different chains very easily, that would go so much to boost a lot of these apps that exist, but maybe they only exist on Polygon. And, a lot of people for some reason don't want to bother to bridge to Polygon. Um, so yeah, I actually think that's kind of a cool idea. Is we don't usually we talk about composability of bridging, but it's like composability of users across chain, I think is really
Love
cool.
it.
And I and a lot of people are working on this. So a lot of people are working on chain abstraction. And I think that chain abstraction is going to be so important, like 100%, because even people who know how to do stuff like you and I, like I hate having to manage all of these different accounts with dust in them. Even though so I remember back when you like didn't actually use the same address for all of these L2s, which is kind of crazy now. But even now when you use the same address across them, it's just such a pain to like figure out like all of this stuff. And so yeah, chain abstraction I think is like one of the most important things, if not the most important thing that we can do for uh like real normal end users.
I completely agree with that. I think that even though when we were talking about why do people not use Web3 apps, we mentioned that, oh, the user experience is bad. But I think the user experience will continue to be bad if we don't also improve things
Mhm.
on the infrastructure side. Because then we make it so much
Yeah.
harder for developers to create that seamless experience. Even if they have integrated a smart wallet, well, maybe they've only done it for one chain and the user
Mhm.
still isn't able to use the app on the chain that they want. So
Yeah.
I do believe the UX and the infrastructure improvements have to happen in tandem.
I agree. And so many people believe this, but for I don't think the everybody is going to come on board to kind of like the crypto ideology of like why censorship is important and why ownership is or censorship resistance and why ownership is important. So it's really important that crypto apps offer like a very similar user experience. So it's fast, it just works, it's not complicated. That's really important to get more people into crypto.
Yeah. And I want to mention one thing. I think we don't just need to build something real, but it needs to be really secure.
Yes. Okay. That's a very, very, yeah. Building something real could also include building something secure. This is a very good point.
Because there are developers building real things and it was a good idea. And then there was some hack
Mm,
and there was some breach. And I think that's also something that needs to be a little bit more straightforward. Like, how do you build
yeah.
something secure? And this is my call to all protocols to clearly state their security model on their website.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think that's really important because there was this app, the name is escaping me, but you know it. The one where you were connected to Twitter and you would almost like sell your profile or people would buy into
Oh,
your profile.
yeah. Yeah.
What was it called again?
Oh, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like by Flashbots, and people could like buy access to your Twitter account, and it would happen through this TEE to make sure that it was like actually you.
Oh, I did not know about that. I was talking about something
Oh,
else, but what is this?
oh yeah. No, this happened a while ago. There was, I believe it was Andrew Miller, who
Mm.
he put up his Twitter account on like in this TEE. It was his real Twitter account, and people could like actually post from his real Twitter account. But then of course to protect everybody from like getting the passwords and to just protect it in general, it was run inside of a TEE for like extra security. But like that's actually not on chain at all, and that's like a really cool use case.
Oh, that's crazy. I love that.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Damn. Okay. I was going to mention the app that was connected to Base. It was when Base launched, and Base were really encouraging developers to build on chain. I don't know if it was called Friendster or Friend or something.
Oh, um, yes, it has friend in the name. Why can I not
Yeah.
remember what the name is?
But all I remember is that people aped in and then they realized that everything was public. So like you were seeing like whose Twitter account was connected to whose blockchain address.
Mhm.
So you essentially just dox everyone. And I don't know if that was done on purpose or by mistake, But let's say it was done by mistake and he or she just didn't realize that, your blockchain address is meant to be private and you're meant to keep it
Mhm.
private. And that was like, in my opinion, like a privacy breach. And I'm like, that's so crazy. So I think as developers building in Web3, you do have a responsibility to make sure the products you're building is respecting the paradigm of blockchain,
Mhm.
which is privacy. So like Ellie said, it's a mindset shift and you have to shift
Yeah.
your mindset as you program as well.
Mhm.
So I have one final question for you, Ellie, unless you have
Okay.
one. Do you have a
No, go
question?
ahead. No, go
Okay.
ahead.
So I want to know, what is your bull case and what is your bear case for blockchain technology and building in the blockchain space?
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So I am very positive towards the future. So my bull case is closer to what I think we can actually achieve. I think the bull case is that we will still have kind of crypto native things that people do, like crypto native apps. But my hope is in the future that a lot of regular people just use crypto, but they just don't know it. Like the blockchain is what is the infrastructure providing it, and it's providing privacy and security and auditability. But the users don't have to know about any of that, and they're just interacting as normal. I would really like my bull case is that a lot of the infrastructure that we use for a lot of so many things can get replaced by something like blockchain. That's my bull case. My bull case would also be too that we like meme coins kind of become a thing of the past, or at least useful meme. I mean, that's never going to happen, but at least useless meme coins. Um, and then I think in the bear case, it's just that we never cross the gap where we ever get people to really use it. So I think the most we ever get is people being onboarded for a meme coin, which then is a terrible experience because they lost all their money. And that we just, yeah, can't get over the hump of getting more people on it. That's my bear case. What about you?
Yeah, I love that. Okay. I would say my bear case is actually kind of similar, that we don't improve the user experience enough to get people interested for just genuine user reasons, like maybe just posting on social media with a different algorithm, for example. And it goes even further. And my bear case goes even further to say that maybe some government then uses blockchain technology to kind of even control people, because
Mhm.
everything is public and you can see it. And they're like, oh, you didn't pay your bills? I mean, you should pay your bills, but like
Mhm.
whatever it is, like, oh, you just bought this new car. I thought you said you
Mhm.
had no money to buy a car. Like. So like I think like that's my bear case. Like they're like, okay, you guys have been doing absolute crazy stuff on here. We need to regulate this so much that you actually can't build these things. Which is
Mhm.
kind of hard. You can't really stop someone from building a blockchain and having people connect to a network, but they kind of like just prohibit the usage so much that they scare just regular people from wanting to use a blockchain. And then they create some alternative that actually abuses the beauty in blockchain technology.
Mhm.
And I think my bull case is the fact that we are still in a dial up phase and we are still working out the infrastructure kinks. The internet took a long time to get where it had to get to. Like, yes, we
Mhm.
know about World Wide Web and when that was created, but everyone had, or at least a lot of us have had the experience of using dial up and how annoying that process was. And if someone is
Mhm.
making a phone call at the same time, you
Mhm.
can't get access to the internet. And I think we're
Yeah.
kind of in that phase right now where the infrastructure is bad. And maybe the people who were desperately using the internet back then, maybe they were researchers who wanted to share information, but I don't think the internet was originally created for that reason. And I think in the same way, we can see that maybe the use case for blockchain technology originally was to have this like kind of like cyberpunk era where you have full privacy and you're able to like transact with who you want. And in some ways we're kind of accomplishing some of that. But I think it's okay if we go through like a few iterations until we find PMF.
Mhm.
And I do think meme coins is a current iteration, and it definitely isn't all positive. It's probably
Mhm.
majority negative. But I do believe we'll get to a point, like while that is happening, these are the people who are desperate enough to use the technology as it is today because the
Mhm.
user experience isn't great. But once the user experience is great, then we will have many more apps that are really solving real problems and we'll all be happy and laughing. And you'll be the head of some
Mhm.
board that gives Ethereum standards and all
Mhm.
that stuff. So yeah.
Thank you. No, I really like your point though about how we need to iterate on these things because I think that this sometimes is a problem in the community where like things were designed initially for a reason. Part of that was because that was the best we knew how to do at the time. The other part of it is that we had different goals. Like we really did it. We really had different goals. And I think that in my opinion, it's very much okay to revisit some of these very core designs that some of the popular chains are based on and say, like, is this still serving us? I think I think that we should do that. So yeah, I really like your point that our goals change.
Yeah.
Mm.
And to everyone who's tweeting, build something real. I love the narrative, but give us
Mhm.
some ideas, please.
Yeah. Mm. All right. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining this episode of Composable. It was really fun.
Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next
Mhm.
one.
All right. Bye.
Bye.